3 weeks ago, my parents drove 40 minutes to my house to ask me to sell it. Not rent it out, not get a loan against it, sell. Hand over every piece of equity I spent 6 years building. Because my brother Mitchell needed bail money after his third arrest. None of this makes sense without context, so let me explain the family situation. I'm 31. Mitchell is 34. My parents never hid who their favorite was, and honestly, I stopped expecting different treatment by the time I was 12. Mitchell was the charming one, the one my mother Ada called special when he got caught stealing from our neighbors at 15. My father Nigel defended him every time anything happened. When Mitchell crashed my father's truck drunk at 19, I was the one who got screamed at for not stopping him. I was 17 and asleep in my room. Okay, we are 13 seconds into this story, and I already need blood pressure medication. This man was asleep, in his room, being a minor, and somehow the drunk driving was his responsibility to prevent? That's not parenting. That's just picking a scapegoat and committing to the bit for life. And calling Mitchell special when he got caught stealing? That's not a compliment. That's a diagnosis your parents refused to get him. This pattern continued for years. Mitchell borrowed money and never returned it. Mitchell moved back home 6 different times between jobs he couldn't keep. Mitchell got fired for showing up impaired, got evicted twice, got into fights that required lawyers. Every single time my parents covered it. And every time they looked at me like I somehow owed them something just because I wasn't the one constantly failing. I bought my house at 25 with money I saved working since I was 18. No family help. 3 bedrooms, small yard, needed serious work. I spent weekends for years fixing it up myself. New kitchen, new floors, repaired the deck. By now, the place is worth close to double what I paid. This is what kills me about golden child dynamics. You can do everything right. Save since 18, buy property at 25, renovate it with your own hands. And to these parents, all that proves is that you have resources to extract. OP built something real while Mitchell was speedrunning every bad decision available to an adult man. And the parents looked at that and thought, perfect, a backup wallet. They didn't raise 2 sons. They raised an ATM and a dependent. So when my parents came to my living room and Ada started explaining how Mitchell was facing serious charges this time, how the bail was high, how they already mortgaged their own house to the limit for his defense attorney, I knew exactly what was coming before she finished speaking. Nigel told me family helps family, that Mitchell made mistakes, but he's blood, that I could buy another house eventually. Ada added that this was temporary, just until Mitchell got back on his feet. I asked why they didn't ask Mitchell to sell the truck they bought him 2 years ago. Nigel's face changed, and he said that was different because Mitchell needed transportation for work. I pointed out Mitchell hadn't been employed in 14 months. Neither of them responded to that. 14 months unemployed, but he needs the truck for work. Folks, they're not even trying to make sense anymore. They've been lying to themselves about Mitchell for so long that they forgot other people have functioning memories. OP hit them with basic math and they just buffered. No response. Because there is no response when your entire argument is, we want what you have and we've decided that's reasonable. Ada started crying. She said I was always like this, always keeping score, always bitter about things that happened years ago. She said I never tried to understand what Mitchell went through. I asked her to tell me specifically what was so hard for Mitchell that I didn't also experience. She just kept crying. I told them no. Said I wouldn't sell my house because Mitchell would be right back in trouble within a year, and I'd have nothing to show for the sacrifice. Nigel stood up and pointed at me and said if I didn't do this, I was dead to this family. I told him that sounded like his choice to make. They left. I assumed that was the conversation finished. I was wrong. Always keeping score is what people say when they don't want you to remember how they treated you. And asking what Mitchell went through that OP didn't? Surgical. Because the answer is nothing. Mitchell went through having every failure cushioned while OP went through being blamed for existing. But here's the thing about that ultimatum. You're dead to this family. Parents like this don't realize they're not threatening. They're offering. That's not a punishment. That's a release from a lifetime subscription to being undervalued. 4 days later, my cousin Cora texted me several screenshots. My mother had made a public post claiming I was in a psychiatric facility receiving treatment. She tagged extended family members. She asked everyone to give me privacy while I was getting help for my mental health issues and specifically requested that nobody contact me during this difficult time. I stared at my phone for probably 10 minutes before I could process what I was looking at. My own mother was telling everyone I knew that I was institutionalized because I refused to hand over my house. And that was just the beginning. This woman weaponized mental health stigma against her own child because he wouldn't liquidate his life for her favorite son. And the genius of it, asking people not to contact him? That's not concern. That's isolation strategy. She's cutting off his support system before he even knows it's happening. This is the kind of calculated cruelty that takes practice. Ada didn't wake up knowing how to do this. She's been manipulating people for decades, and OP just never saw the full playbook until now. Update 1. After my mother's psychiatric facility post went up, my phone got quiet. Not concerned messages, just silence from people who normally texted regularly. My friend Kyle sent me a message saying my mother had reached out to him directly through Facebook. She found him tagged in my photos and messaged him explaining I was going through a breakdown and might say things that weren't true. Kyle said he didn't believe her but wanted to give me a heads up. That meant she was actively contacting my personal friends to spread this story. She's going through his tagged photos to find friends to contact. That's not a concerned mother, that's reconnaissance. That's military-level commitment to destroying someone's credibility. And notice what she told Kyle. He might say things that aren't true. She's not just lying about him now. She's preemptively discrediting anything he might say later. This woman should be consulting for PR firms with that kind of strategic thinking. I drove to my parents' house that Sunday. Ignoring this would only let the narrative spread. When I arrived, both of them acted like nothing was wrong. Ada offered me coffee. Nigel asked about work. I asked Ada why she posted that I was institutionalized. She said she was trying to protect me. I asked how lying about my mental health protected me. She said if I wasn't going to help Mitchell, then she needed to give people a reason why I was being so cold. In her mind, the only explanation for refusing was mental illness. Nigel jumped in saying I was making this about myself when Mitchell was sitting in jail. I reminded him Mitchell was there because of Mitchell's choices. He raised his voice about how I'd always been jealous, always resented the attention Mitchell got. I told him that was exactly right. I resented watching them excuse every failure while holding me to impossible standards. Ada kept saying I didn't understand what it was like being a mother watching her child suffer. I asked if she remembered me at all. Any moment she showed up for something I accomplished, she couldn't answer. If you weren't going to help, I needed to give people a reason why you were being so cold. She just said that, out loud. She admitted the lie was strategic, not delusional. She knows he's not mentally ill. She just needed a cover story because my son won't bankrupt himself for my other son's bail. Doesn't play well at family gatherings. And when OP asked if she remembered showing up for anything he accomplished, silence. Not, of course I do. Not a single memory. Just nothing. Because there's nothing to remember. That conversation went nowhere. I left. 3 days later, my cousin Cora forwarded me a video. My mother had sent it to multiple family members. It showed my childhood bedroom. Ada was holding a box of my old trophies from track and academics. While recording, she dropped them one by one into a garbage bag, calling each one a symbol of my selfishness. Then the video showed their backyard fire pit. Nigel held up my birth certificate, said I wasn't really their son anymore, and dropped it into the flames. They recorded themselves committing a ritual. This wasn't anger. Anger breaks things in private. This was performance. They filmed it, edited it, and distributed it to family members. Burning a birth certificate while saying, "You're not our son," is the kind of thing cults do to dissenters. And they sent this to multiple people thinking it would make them look good? Watch us symbolically murder our child's existence is not the flex they think it is. But here's what gets me. Those trophies, he earned those. While Mitchell was getting special treatment for stealing, OP was winning things, and now those achievements are symbols of selfishness. To these people, succeeding at anything is selfish, because it means you have something they can't take from you. I watched that video 6 times. Something shifted. Not sadness. Something colder and more focused. These people spent my entire life making me feel less than Mitchell. Now they were burning evidence of my existence because I wouldn't sacrifice everything for him. I started making plans. Real plans. I remembered something my Aunt Anne mentioned years ago at a family gathering about how my parents' property situation was more complicated than they let on. I filed that away back then. Now I intended to use it. Then I learned about the family reunion they were planning next month, every branch invited. I wasn't on the list, but I knew exactly why they were organizing it. Guys, this is the moment. You can feel the switch flip. There's a specific kind of calm that happens when you stop hoping your parents will love you right and start planning how to protect yourself from them. OP filed away that property information years ago. Didn't need it then. But when you grow up in a house where you're the backup plan, you learn to keep receipts. You learn to notice things. Not because you're scheming, because survival in that environment requires paying attention. And now? Now he's going to use every single thing he learned from being underestimated. Update 2. I contacted my Aunt Anne. She lives 2 states away, and we only see each other at major family events, but she was always decent to me growing up. I messaged her on Facebook asking if she remembered what she mentioned years ago about my parents' property situation. Anne took a while to respond. When she did, she explained that my grandmother, her mother, had left a small piece of land to both her children equally when she passed. My mother, Ada, and Anne each inherited half. The land wasn't worth much, but it had been in the family for generations. Anne said my parents convinced her to let them manage the whole property since she lived far away. They promised to split any decisions or profits. Instead, they'd been renting it out for years and keeping all the income. Anne never pushed the issue because she didn't want family drama. So they've been stealing from Anne for years, while calling OP selfish. The audacity is almost impressive. Let us manage the property, we'll split everything. And then just pocketing all of it? And Anne let it go because she didn't want drama? That's how these people operate. They count on decent people being too polite to call them out. They've been running this same playbook on everyone. Take advantage. Dare them to say something. Rely on family obligation to keep them quiet. OP's not rude for exposing this. He's just the first person willing to stop being polite. This gave me information but not direct leverage. What gave me leverage was what Anne told me next. She said my parents had been calling extended family members for weeks. Not about Mitchell's situation. About me. They were telling everyone that I had been stealing from them for years, that I refused to help with medical bills when Nigel was sick last year, that I had cut them off, and they were heartbroken about losing their son. None of that was true. Nigel was never sick. I never stole anything. They cut me off. Anne said she didn't believe them because she remembered how they treated me at family gatherings, always comparing me to Mitchell, always dismissing my accomplishments. She said several cousins felt the same way but were afraid to speak up. The reunion made sense now. It wasn't a celebration. It was a campaign. They wanted to gather the entire family, present their version of events, and get everyone aligned against me before I could tell my side. Make the exile official and permanent. I decided to attend anyway. They invented a medical emergency that never happened. They accused OP of stealing when they're the ones who've been pocketing Anne's rental income for over a decade. This is projection operating at an Olympic level. Every crime they commit, they preemptively accuse him of. And organizing a whole family reunion just to formalize kicking him out? Most people plan reunions for potato salad and awkward conversations. These two planned one as a public execution. But OP showing up anyway? That's the energy. Don't let people narrate your story when you can walk in and tell it yourself. The reunion was at my uncle's house on a Saturday. I showed up without warning. The look on my mother's face when I walked through the door was something I will remember forever. Pure panic. Nigel immediately started toward me, but I just smiled and found a seat near my cousins. About an hour in, after food and small talk, my father stood up. He made a speech about family unity and difficult decisions. Then he said that sometimes a family has to protect itself from members who choose selfishness over blood. He looked directly at me and announced that I was no longer welcome at family gatherings, that I had abandoned them when they needed me most, and that this was the family's official position. Several relatives looked uncomfortable. A few nodded along. I just smiled, nodded once. Didn't argue, didn't defend myself, didn't make a scene, because I had already sent a very specific message to every family member in that room before I arrived. A message containing the video of my parents burning my birth certificate, screenshots of my mother's psychiatric facility post, and the texts where Nigel told me I was dead to them for not selling my house. The pre-send. Guys, he already deployed the truth before walking in. Wait, Nigel's up there giving his rehearsed speech about family unity while everyone in that room has already seen him burning his son's birth certificate. Every word out of Nigel's mouth is just confirming what the screenshots showed. He's unknowingly proving OP's case in real time. This is what happens when you underestimate the kid you ignored for 30 years. You think he's going to show up and beg for acceptance. Instead, he shows up having already won and just watches you dig the hole deeper. My Aunt Anne looked at me from across the room. She had seen everything. So had Cora. So had a dozen other relatives. And that was just the first part of my plan. Final update. After the reunion, everything moved fast. Half the family stopped speaking to my parents within days. Cousins who had stayed quiet for years started sharing their own stories about how Ada and Nigel treated them, how they always demanded favors but never reciprocated, how Mitchell had borrowed money from several of them and never paid it back. The family group chat became a place where people finally said what they'd been holding in for decades. Once one person breaks the silence, the whole dam collapses. Everyone knew. Cousins, aunts, uncles. They all had stories. They were just waiting for permission to say them. OP didn't just defend himself, he gave everyone else the cover to finally be honest. That's the thing about family dysfunction. It only works when everyone agrees to pretend. The moment someone refuses to play along, you find out real fast who else was tired of the game. But that was just the social pressure. The real pressure came from what arrived at my parents' house the following Thursday. My Aunt Anne and I had been talking extensively since the reunion. She watched my father publicly exile me while knowing the truth. Something shifted in her, too. She decided she was done letting my parents take advantage of her kindness. We hired an attorney together. The letter that arrived demanded a full accounting of every rental payment collected from the inherited property over the past 12 years, plus Anne's rightful 50% share of all income. We calculated the total based on current rental rates for similar properties. It was substantial. Money my parents had been pocketing while telling Anne the land was basically worthless. The same letter included a cease and desist regarding the defamatory statements my mother made about my mental health. We documented every post, every message to my friends, every lie told to family members. The attorney made clear that continued defamation would result in legal action. 12 years of stolen rental income, and they told Anne the land was basically worthless while collecting checks on it. These aren't people who made one bad decision under stress. This is a pattern, a lifestyle. They've been running scams on family members for over a decade. The cease and desist is almost poetic. Ada weaponized public posts against OP, and now she legally cannot post about him anymore. She built a tool, and now it's been taken from her. Play defamation games. Win attorney letter prizes. My parents showed up at my house 2 days later. Nigel was practically shaking. Ada kept saying they didn't have that kind of money, that the house was already mortgaged for Mitchell's defense, that this would destroy them financially. She begged me to tell Anne to back off, to drop the cease and desist, to understand that they were just trying to protect their family. I asked her which family. The one that burned my birth certificate. The one that told everyone I was institutionalized. The one that publicly announced I was exiled. Nigel tried a different approach. He said I was being vindictive, that I was punishing them for loving Mitchell more when that was just how things were sometimes between siblings. He actually admitted it, out loud, that they loved Mitchell more. And he said it like that was a reasonable excuse for everything they did. That's just how things were sometimes between siblings. Siblings? Nigel, you're the parent. The favoritism didn't happen to you, it happened because of you. You don't get to describe your own parenting choices like they were weather. Sometimes it rains, sometimes we emotionally neglect one child while enabling the other's destruction. You know how it is. And he said this while asking for help. The complete lack of self-awareness would be funny if it weren't so devastating. He admitted decades of deliberate unequal treatment and genuinely expected that admission to make things better. I told them both to leave. I said the attorney would handle everything from this point forward. Ada grabbed my arm and said I couldn't do this to them, that they were my parents, that I owed them for raising me. I reminded her that raising me included telling me I was never good enough, comparing me unfavorably to my brother for 30 years, and trying to take my house when their golden child needed money. They left. Nigel sent me 17 text messages over the next week. Ada sent voice messages crying about how the family was falling apart because of me. Mitchell even reached out from where he was, saying I was destroying our parents over some old grudges. 17 texts. 17. From the man who said OP was dead to him. Funny how "you're not my son anymore" has an expiration date when the attorney letters start arriving. And Mitchell, who's been the source of every financial drain on this family for 2 decades, is calling this old grudges? Brother, you're in custody right now. The grudges are current. The entitlement is hereditary, apparently. All 3 of them genuinely believe OP owes them his success because they're related to him. That's not family. That's a subscription service they signed him up for without consent. I saved every message, forwarded them to the attorney. Anne is pursuing her share of the property income. The cease and desist stopped the public posts. And my parents face a choice. Sell the property to pay what they owe Anne, or face legal action they cannot afford. They asked me to sell my house for Mitchell. Now they might lose theirs because of their own choices. They called me selfish for years. Turns out I just learned from watching them.